All right, popping in live. Just getting things going. We got Facebook here, Instagram here, and then we're gonna pump this to YouTube as well. So I'm gonna refresh my computer over here. Let's see, am I on? Here we go. Make sure everything's coming up live. Good. All right, so let's talk Canon. Big day yesterday, right? We all know it's been coming. How many photo nerds are out there? How many people love it when new gear drops? I'm sure everybody's got a lot to say about this. You know, some people, if you're watching online, they were expecting more for the R1. Everybody seems to be really happy with the R5MII II. I'm Canon through and through. I'm a Canon Explorer of Light. Full disclosure, CPS is my support team. I've been a lifelong Canon shooter. In fact, I was going to go to the archive here and pull out some of my professional gear. I was the fish swimming upstream, so to speak, when I was a journalist. Everybody had Nikon gear, but because back then it was manual focus, so I had muscle memory for predictive focus when things were going to come at you, right? So I still have that muscle memory, and I could photograph and use this Canon F1 beautifully. Still got that muscle memory. Could still focus this really well, really fast. In fact, this 85-1.8 has taken some pretty iconic photographs of Michael Jordan and the run for the championship with the Bulls, which I had a privilege of photographing with. And let's talk about that history, right? Here's a camera that was my dad's, a Canon half frame rangefinder, right? So you got 72 pictures out of 36 because it took a half frame photograph instead of a full frame 35 millimeter. Yes, I did have a motor drive for it, but the motor drive died and didn't see any reason for fixing it because I moved on to digital prior to leaving the Chicago Sun-Times. But while I was at the Sun-Times, I invested in my own digital gear, again, because I felt it was better quality than the competitor's gear at that moment in time. So I still have the original EOS 1DS, which was the first really full-frame, practical digital camera. So I could talk Canon all day long. I'm intimately familiar. And when you go back to this bad boy, or the original EOS 1, which is here. So I'm a big fan of the one user. So here's the EOS 1 film camera, right? First autofocus bad boy that I started using, right? And then first autofocus, completely digital. And I did use the Nikon D1, but I've just always preferred Canon color science. Again, I could take over and focus way back when with this camera because the focus wasn't as crazy, sticky, and accurate as things are now. The EOS 1, bad camera, right? Badass camera, great camera, ruggedness. So I'm intimately familiar with the 1 series, starting with the F1, and the EOS 1, and the EOS 1D, and the 1DS, and progressing on and on and on. So drop your questions in the feed, and we'll see if I can answer any questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of go off of what I've got here from the Canon press release. I've not had the pleasure yet of using either the 5D Mark II or the EOS R1. Not yet. So it's been really tight-lipped on everything in the development and who's been tapped to use it in product release. So Canon's been really great at spreading that love around. I'm kind of the Speedlight guy, so I do a lot of the product launches and assist with product development for Speedlights. So let's talk cameras. Let's see who's here. Hey, Fel Safari, how you doing, my friend? Miss you. Love to get back to Africa really soon. Right? Who else is on there? Any questions? Pop them in the feed. Thanks everybody for joining in. I'll hit the wave here on it. So yeah, let's talk digital. I currently shoot as my main camera the EOS R3. In fact, let me grab that out of the vault. And I use, my cameras are the R3, R5, R8. So here's my current digital lineup. And I can tell you the reasons for them all. Starting with the R3, I've never been caught up in the pixel wars because, again, going back to the EOS 1D, I mean, what was that, 4 megapixels, 6 megapixels? You know, maybe someone from Canon could jump in and help me out on that. And then you get the first stacked backside illuminated image sensor in the R3. But ergonomically, this fits. I don't have to think. The AF-on multifunction touch button, I'm addicted to it. So when that came out, the R5 became my secondary camera because I fumbled a lot ergonomically. My hands are kind of big and I wasn't always hitting the joystick. You know, it was just, for some reason, I couldn't get used to the joystick again once I started using the multi-touch button. I do shoot in crazy weather. We had a wedding recently and one a few years ago where it was a microburst. Seriously, a microburst. We had 7 photographers on this wedding with us. A lot of them were using 5 series cameras and they went down because they weren't weather sealed. I was using a EOS 1DX Mark II, one of those. And because all the weather sealing and the weather sealing with back then the 600 EXRT flashes on camera, I didn't go down at all. So we had 7 photographers. So 6 of them went down. The other couple took shelter, right? The wedding kept going on, so I was able to keep on shooting. So that's the power of a 1 series. And I did consider the R3 a flagship camera. The focus is incredible. The speed is incredible. The files, again, I have, here we go. All right. We do a lot of large format printing for clients. This is a large format print, and I do it at crazy high ISOs and events. This is from the R3. No problem at all. So I'm not as caught up in the megapixels as a lot of people are. I've been edited my whole life. So my picture editors would always say, get closer. They didn't want to crop. Back in the film days, you had grain. There was always some reason to shoot as tight as possible. So again, I'm not caught up. The megapixels and the files are so great at the 24 megapixel range, and for speed and for everything else, that's the right tool for a lot of things that I do. Even wildlife, for fun, and the inclement weather that I find myself in oftentimes, the 1 series just take a licking and keep on ticking and keep on going. And they're fast, right? I love the speed. The R3 and R5, the R3's autofocus was spot on, right? It was just, goes to 11, to quote Spinal Tap, just goes 1 more. So while they're saying that both the R5 Mark II and the R1 have a lot of similarities in the focus, I cannot say for sure because I've not used them. I'm going off of what other reviewers have said, what other EOLs that I know that have used it have said, and they say they're both just great, right? Because they have a lot of deep learning, a lot of predictive capabilities. They've taken the knowledge from all the autofocus that they've learned with the previous cameras, embedded it into the new ones, and it just makes our jobs so much, I shouldn't say easier, but allows us to take that technology and that tool to capture the moment. So instead of me, even at times, as good as the face head eye detection is in the R3, autofocus still works off of light and contrast. So there are times when you're using the whole field of view, the full field of view, face detection and all that, and I'm at an event, and a crazy spotlight hits the dance floor and illuminates a face in the background. Not my couple, who are in flat dark light, right? So if I had the whole field of view active focus points going, it's gonna jump to the brightest, most contrasty point, right? So thereby, I would always control and take charge and narrow that field of view, keep it centered on a couple. You know, now you have the ability to register up to 10 people, much easier, much more improved than the R3, so that you could program your specific subjects or players in sports. I hope they bring this out for animal tracking. That would be fabulous. But then you can dial that right in. So when you pick up your camera's looking first for that face that you've registered, no matter what the light. That's incredible. So all this technology is something to embrace and to use because it's enabling us to capture moments that were fleeting that we couldn't really capture before. So at the super high frame rate, the readout rate, the refresh rate, these are all just tools to embrace. You still have to master how to use it. I've never given up control of the moments that I need to get for our clients and what I'm going to capture and give it all up to technology. I have worked with photographers that are second shooting for us and they're like, oh, it's so great. I'm going to put it in face head-eye detection. I'm going to walk around and shoot. When I do their calling and editing, I have to give them a phone call and say, hey, you need to take charge at times and tell that camera where to look, what to focus on to stay in the subject. Because as I said before, the R3, R5 that we currently have, it's going to go to the brightest, most contrasty subject that's closest to the lens. Now, the new autofocus between the R5MII II and the R1 look crazy incredible that it locks onto a face. It's going to stay on that face even if an object crosses that path. And it gets even more sticky if you program that face and register it to the camera. So I'm stoked to try and use this new technology. I'm crazy excited about the improved image sensor because we shoot a lot at high ISOs and terrible light. You have to shoot when the client wants to shoot, right? And even though I do light a lot with speed lights and strobes and off-camera flash and, you know, constant light, I use whatever light I can. At times you have to shoot when the light is terrible. And at times you have to turn off your lights because you need to capture the mood in the scene, that ambient light, right? So you got to use it all. You have to understand how the camera's gonna work. And then when you really do embrace it, you can exploit that technology that all of these camera manufacturers have given us. There really isn't a bad camera on the market today. What I say is go and rent and try a camera. Don't chase gear. If you don't need to upgrade and you're happy with your R5, R3, whatever camera you're using, and if it works for you and you're getting the results you want, boom, stay with it. But for me, we're always challenged on every job. It keeps getting more challenging with crazy light, LED lighting, low light, flat light, highlights, concerts, all this crazy stuff. So the better tool that I can have to give me that edge to capture those significant moments for our clients, you betcha I'm going to use it. And I'm going to learn that gear so that the gear gets out of the way and I'm able to use that technology to the best of my ability. All right, let's see. Any questions in the feed here? Who's there? Let's see. Just scrolling in here. C-Log 2, let's see how the noise is and if it can compete with Sony video. You know, as I said before, there are so many amazing cameras that are out there. Let's go back to the EOS 5D Mark II. Vincent Laforet was first to have it, and he made a crazy cool film, Reverie. And I was second. I got the camera once it was in production. Immediately, I've never done any cinema, any movies. I took that camera out and I used every lens and I created a film that I just did on spec. And Canon appreciated it so much that they bought it from me. So the film, I'm just blanking out. Dawn, help me out. What's our film? It's Tugboats. It was in the middle of winter, crazy cold. Oh, wow. I'll put it in the feed. I'll put it in the feed. I'm just so excited about the new cameras. So video in this form factor is just incredible. I'm not a videographer, so whatever I program it to do, I like to shoot at a higher frame rate so that I could bring it back into slow-mo. And the only time I really do a lot of cinema and video is for our wildlife. At weddings and events, I need to stay in the zone for what they hired me for. And that's to capture their most significant moments. So we have a video team that works alongside us. They're shooting, and half of them are Sony, some of them are Canon. Again, whatever works and the right tool for you is the right camera to have. So it's the same with these two cameras, the R3, R5, and moving forward, the R1, R5MII II. I'm gonna go for two R1s. Again, I just love the ergonomics of the camera. I love the feel, I love the built-in battery grip. I love how weather sealed and durable it is. And I'm gonna have an R5MII II that I'll use for portraits or remotes. Oftentimes, you know, we just did an event a 10-year wedding anniversary, and I posted on Facebook some of the images and what we did. I had 4 remote cameras shooting 2 live and 2 time-lapse cameras, right? Because there's so much going on that we didn't have the budget for more photographers. So we had 2 photographers, 1 assistant. So the way to get more coverage is remote cameras. Now, I know that's nothing really new for video, and it's really not anything new for still photography because I did it my entire career at the Sun-Times. We would mount remote cameras behind the backboard, at the third base side, use pocket wizards, firing, all those sorts of things. But bringing it to weddings and events is something completely new, right? So I do that all the time. A lot of times when we're at a ceremony, the couples will have their back towards us for the religious portion of the ceremony. I could mount a camera remotely, put it in silent mode, face, head, eye detection active. Either I could fire it from my primary camera with a pocket wizard, or oftentimes I'll just set it up on an interval timer to take a picture every 3 seconds. And then I'll have it roll over from the primary card to the secondary card so we never miss a moment, right? So those things are awesome. This technology is super exciting. Let's see. Hello from Atlanta. There we go. Let's see. I think I'm caught up. No more questions, right? So let me just pull up the laptop here. I'll bring this over by me, and then we can just kind of review the specs, right? So I could tilt this downward. Audio good? Could I get a thumbs up if we got good audio? Right? There we go. So I'm in the lighting lab preparing for an assignment tomorrow. All right, so let's see, the talking points for our R1s, the powerful autofocus upgrade. Check out a lot of the videos, people that have had their hands on the cameras. You know, Fro at Fro Knows Photo, he uses a lot of different cameras because he is a reviewer. I mean, he shot with Sony, he shoots with Pentax, he shoots with Nikon, and he shoots with Canon. And he dropped a video today that he was saying that the R1 is quite possibly, and the R5MII R2, bar none, the best autofocus system that he's used in the limited time he's had an opportunity to do with it. 24.2 megapixel full frame, backside illuminated stacked CMOS sensor with dual pixel AF. That's huge. So the only time I've really encountered this struggle with autofocus is in wildlife, in low light. If a bird is on a horizontal branch and the bird is also horizontal, there's too much horizontal going on, and you'd almost have to turn the camera a little bit askew for the autofocus to grab. And that's because all of the AF points were horizontal. So when you had too many things lining up horizontally and there wasn't enough contrast for the autofocus to grab onto, it would struggle with that horizontal autofocus. Now it looks like because every AF point is a crosshair type, you're not going to have that issue at all. So it's crazy cool. Oh, this is one thing that I'm super excited about. The pre-continuous shooting capture, up to a half a second of images prior to the full shutter release. My timing is pretty spot on for weddings and events, but small birds, the smaller the bird, the harder they are to time that shot when they leap. The larger the bird, the easier it is because for whatever reason they telegraph more, meaning if a raptor is going to launch, an owl, an eagle, a hawk, something like that, and they've been perched on a branch for a while, they lighten the load, right? Usually they'll poop, they squat, and then they go. And when they launch, they're heavier birds, so it's slower. It's up and then they drop. But when you're in Africa and you're trying to photograph a lilac-breasted roller as it springs off the branch, I mean, boom, by the time I've reacted, I've wasted a whole card trying to get that launch, and I'm always a fraction of a second late. So at pre-capture, what's going to happen is as long as you have the shutter button halfway pressed down, it's recording. And the minute you activate the shutter, now you get those frames prior to that. So your timing and your odds of capturing those significant moments is going to be greatly increased. The new Digic accelerator works in tandem with the Digic X processor. So what that's doing is it's giving more computational power to the camera. Things like autofocus and maintaining that focus and capturing the acquire of your subject in lower, flatter light. So all this technology is allowing us to have the tools to capture greater photographs, right? What else do we have? Fast sensor readout, lots of formats in video that are added to it. One thing that I was hoping for in all the rumors prior to these cameras being released, there was speculation that the readout was going to be so fast that the flash sync speed could have been at 1250, shutter speed of 1250. I would have loved that because I do a lot of outdoor lighting. I don't rely on high-speed sync because it's kind of fuzzy logic. It gets really inconsistent at times, and when you're looking for those moments at a wedding or an event, and you're lighting outside, you know, sometimes high-speed sync, no matter how good it is, it just struggles a bit, right? So I'd rather have the full power and capacity of the flash or strobe that I'm using. They did up it, so with electronic shutter, you can shoot on the R1 at 1/320th of a second, so that helps, versus a 250th. And then the R5, I believe, is now at 250th in electronic shutter. Both cameras, R5MII and R1, have maintained and kept the mechanical shutter, which I appreciate because there's times where I want the mechanical shutter and there's times I want to go full electronic. If I want silent mode, that's all electronic. I do use silent mode a lot at our events, especially during the religious portion or significant moments. Or if I'm photographing a boardroom for a corporate job, I could be completely silent. So that's helpful. In wildlife, it's completely silent and helpful. The R5MII, again, they're borrowing a lot of the autofocus technology that's in the R1 is in the R5MII. So you don't necessarily need to have both. You could choose which camera is going to be the right tool to suit you and what you photograph. Again, a lot of things that we do depend on speed, deliverability, wireless connectivity, LAN connectivity if I'm photographing a corporate event or a high-profile gala. We're working with social media team. We're on the red carpet, so we are shooting live and moving photos. The last big gala that we did this past spring, we moved about 850 photographs the night of the event. So, A, you want to be spot on as much as possible with your color and exposure, and B, speed to deliver. So for that, 24 megapixels is plenty, right? So I don't need to worry about having that. But yeah, I do have the R5 with me, and I will have an R5MII if I'm going to do portraits, right? Then if I'm going to be doing an editorial magazine cover, not necessarily do they need the megapixels, because I used to work for Time Magazine, and I would use the original EOS 1DS, right? And this is a fraction of it. And this didn't shoot RAW, it shot TIFFs. So it was either JPEG or TIFF. There wasn't RAW back then. And TIFFs, it would take forever to write. It would be... So you get maybe 1 frame a second or a second and a half. Right now we're able to shoot in 40 frames per second, full 14-bit RAW captures. I mean, come on, this is crazy cool stuff. I hate to sound like a dinosaur coming from the past, but the past leads us to the future, right? And embracing this technology and choosing the right tool that works for you. Lots of cool video features within the R5MII. The R5MII seems to be a great all-around camera, and we'll see if I use that more for wildlife or not. For me, it depended a lot on the ergonomics. Again, especially vertically, when I would use the R5 original, I had a hard time finding this joystick. It needed to be further up here where my hand naturally lies. And it's just a bit of a stretch on the back of the R5 now. If it was where the AF on button is, I'd have better opportunity to move the focus points around. And I do move the focus points around. So it'll be interesting to see how much I'm going to want to grab and move that autofocus point around with these new cameras. From all the demo videos I've seen, it's pretty crazy cool. You're not having to jump in and take control as often as I would on the R5 and R3. So exciting stuff, right? Very cool. Oh, they all are going to have the multifunction hot shoe, like the R3, the R6 Mark II. So what that does, it's going to allow you to have power from the camera to power external mics. There was a device going around, I think it's for Android, it's not yet been released, for an iPhone. That you would plug it in and you'd connect your smartphone to it, and you could use that as an external monitor, especially for video. I like to use an external monitor, a Ninja external monitor, for education and recording what I see through the viewfinder and how I move around the autofocus points and change my color, change my exposure, all within camera. So great, exciting stuff. That's all I've got to say. I can't say too much more because I've not had a chance to touch the cameras. So we'll see once I get a chance to get my hands on them. Supposedly we're going to get R5 Mark IIs sometime in August. So I will definitely, I do a lot of testing. I got to test because, again, I'm not relying on technology. I'll use the technology, but when all of a sudden the technology starts going south for whatever reason, if I've tested my tools, I know exactly where I could go to not miss the moment or not miss the shot. All right, so let's see. What do we got? Any questions? Well, hello. Good to see you down in Puerto Rico. How's things? Joel Lerner. Oh, view request. Okay. Joel, if you're still there, I answered your request. Come on in. Hit a few wave buttons, right? Wave. Hello, everybody. Yeah, so it's good stuff here. All right. You can tell I'm excited. I've been a lifelong Canon user. I have used other cameras at times, but for myself and my career, professionally, it's been all Canon my entire life, right? So my very first camera was that I would use was a Canon AT1 and a Canon A1, and then I graduated rapidly up to the F1, all mechanical. I mean, you could drive nails with this bad boy, completely metal. You don't need a battery, mechanical shutter. The battery was only for the meter, and then for certain automatic features. Oh yeah, so the R8. I've used the R8 as a travel camera, walk around camera, and then also as a remote, because this has essentially the same image sensor as I believe the R3. Now I might start getting a little bit confused on the technical stuff, but it's great at low light, great at acquiring focus, great interval timer, face head detection, all great. So this is a great remote camera. Like I said, the last event we had a bunch of remote cameras, and my rundown was 2 remote cameras in their carriages. So the family did a procession with their antique carriages. So I put a carriage camera, a remote camera in each one in silent mode. Again, an interval timer because it got out of my range if I was going to use a radio transmitter. So I would let them record every 3 seconds, capturing those moments. And then I would just have to call it, but you capture different points of view. Then we had 2 remote cameras in the venue space because they were going to progress immediately from the carriages into the venue space. Ceremony was going to start, so I wanted an elevated point of view while I was still photographing them live. And our second camera, Larry Remaker, outstanding job. He's photographing live, and currently his camera of choice is the R6 Mark II. So we'll see moving forward if he stays with that. I'm going to be selling 2 R3s, and I'm going to be selling 3 R5s. They're impeccably maintained. CPS services all my gear, certifies it, takes care of it, keeps us up and running. So if you have any questions, you want to talk cameras, you want to throw any ideas out there, drop it in the feed, and I am happy to answer your questions. Oh, it just hit my brain. The video that I did, the first video that we launched and cinematic thing that we did for Canon was Voyage. So it was bitter cold on the canal systems here in the Chicago area about the tugboats and the barge workers that live 30 days on, 30 days off on these barges and moving bulk material up and down the canal and all the way down to the Mississippi River. So yeah, great stuff. Good things, all good. So exciting times. All right, let's just pop this up and see where we're at. See if any more questions come in. Hey, Phil. Any idea how much bigger, this is from Tony, had a question. Any idea how much bigger in size the R1 is compared to the R3? Yeah, it's definitely beefier. It's a little bit taller. I think this weighs, this is really light. So this comes in at a pound or a little bit more than a pound. And the R1 comes in right under or right at about 2 pounds. So it is significantly bigger. The viewfinder is bigger. The eye tracking, oh yeah, eye tracking. Oh my God, they've greatly improved eye tracking. I did and do use eye tracking on the R3, especially when I'm at a corporate gig or people that are speaking and I could look around the viewfinder. I didn't find the R3 eye tracking as snappy and spontaneous enough to use it with wildlife or things rapidly moving. There was always a bit of a delay. But again, from what reviewers are saying with both the R5MII II and the R1 is it's a huge leap forward, far more accurate and snappy in acquiring that focus, right? So again, just technology, and they said it works with glasses. My glasses here are for reading, they're progressive. So 90% of the time I shoot without glasses, but if I want to see the type on the screen, I need to put my reading glasses on. So yeah, it is significantly bigger. The highest resolution EVF, I believe on the market, is in the R1. So that was a little challenging for me too to shoot live, bouncing back and forth between the R3 and the R5. Is the R5 EVF, the electronic viewfinder, was a lot less resolution, wasn't as sharp and as crisp as that of the R3. Remember, the R3 came out after the R5, a couple years after, I believe, and so you have new advanced technology. Same with the rear LCD screen. This is incredibly bright and sharp improvement over the R5. So we'll see where that goes when I get my hands on both an R1 and an R5MII II. My order is in. Just like you guys, I have to wait. You know, I wish that Canon would just give us all a camera immediately so I could speak far more intelligently when these products drop, but there just isn't enough of them to go around. Their priority is the Olympics currently. So we're going to have a lot of feedback out of the Olympics for how both of these cameras perform. A colleague of mine, Jeff Cable, follow him, jeffcable.com, and you can go to his blog. He posts his experiences live. He shoots for the U.S. Olympic team, so he's going to be in Paris using both of these cameras, and he's going to be giving a rundown on how they work. And he is on deadline and speed is of the essence, so it'll be interesting to see, is he shooting JPEG? Is he going to be shooting RAW? Because currently there isn't a RAW decode in many of the image editing software for the R1. I have heard a few people online said that they were able to get the RAW decode for the R5MII II. So we'll see. But even just the JPEGs that they're posting are pretty phenomenal. All right, let's see. Any other questions here? Just scrolling through. Very cool. All good. Good, good, good. All right, thanks for tuning in. Drop your comments in the feed, and I will be sharing this out to YouTube as well. And once I get my hands on one, we're going to put it through its paces. Same way I did when the R dropped, same way I did when the R5 dropped, and the same thing I did when I got the 200 to 800, because I got to test. I got to know what works and what doesn't work, right? I use it all. All right, man. Have a great evening. Stay safe. Take care. Have a good weekend.